All right, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Crypto Wolf back again, and tonight we're going to be doing something a little bit different from usual because the market's kind of just real chill right now. It doesn't have the volume going. It's not overly exciting, although we've had a nice couple days recently. But I wanted to get in something a little bit different, and that is I was watching a video earlier tonight. It's our boys over at Debate Crypto. They were doing an outstanding job, honestly. And they were doing, what they do, something different on Wednesday nights. And they were talking about the overlap a little bit between preparedness and the crypto community. And I've noticed for a while now that it exists. And a lot of people who get into crypto and things, pay a lot of attention to, the financial markets overall and things like that and what's going on in the world. And it's people, tend to be fairly in touch, with what's going on down on the street. And I hear from a lot of people who definitely notice, we don't like the way the Fed works and all that stuff. And it kind of leads people to like, okay, what can I do to hedge against this a little bit? And Bitcoin in and of itself has long time been, thought of as a hedge against inflation and government overreach and privacy and all that good stuff. And so I noticed, since a lot of people are getting into it and there is a lot more overlap, and as more and more people in the crypto industry begin to talk about what they've been doing in the realm of preparedness, that figured I'd finally touch on it because I may know a thing or two about it. Yeah, may have been doing it for a little while now. And so gonna jump into that. So real quick, quote of the day: by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Probably the most common quote in regards to preparedness. But real quick looking, that was what was going on lately with Bitcoin. We had some nice little pump action, some crazy volatility going on in between. And honestly, even this pump right here is some crazy volatility. Came pretty much out of nowhere, except for, maybe this little trigger wave right here. But, it cooled off for a little bit since then. That's kind of where we're at. But real quick, shout out to Debate Crypto. This is their video over here today. What if you're not prepared? Depression incoming. It's the title of their video. I recommend watching it. It was pretty good. I gotta say, they did a pretty good job. The chat was pretty fun. I was surprised how many people not only were like getting into it, but knew a thing or two about it as well. So that was kind of cool to see. And I've also heard, and I don't even watch much crypto YouTube anymore, and I've still heard plenty of people talking about, obviously Ben over at BitBoy Crypto, he's got his own thing going on in that arena. I'm pretty sure I've heard Crypto Face talk about it. So I mean, this is not a new subject for a lot of people, and particularly with the way the markets have been looking absolutely crazy, the way inflation's going up, war going on around the country, around the world. I mean, riots that we've been dealing with, just pretty much absolute chaos all over the damn place. So, with all that going on, things can get interesting here, and I got a little slideshow to go along with what I'm talking about here. So, why would you want to even think about, let alone get into any sort of preparedness mindset? And the biggest thing that I want to get across to people is it's not even so much like a doomsday prepper type of thing. It's not like it doesn't have to be, you think the end of the world is coming or anything like that. It doesn't have to be a giant societal collapse. I mean, literally, at its most basic level is just shit happens. And it really does. Like, and just because maybe shit hasn't happened to you yet doesn't mean that it can't. And as an example of that, I mean, I've lived through plenty of crazy stuff just in and of itself. I mean, woke up with the house on fire one time, had to live in a hotel for a year, all kind of stuff, car accidents, blizzards, tornadoes. I haven't lived through a tornado, but I'm one of them people where, if I start hearing the sirens going off, I'm walking outside like, where's it at? Got my phone, got my camera, come on. But speaking of, matter of fact, even talking about tornadoes, I just heard some people got videos of like entire houses being lifted off the ground by tornadoes, literally just like a couple hours from where I'm at right now. So stuff absolutely does happen. Even if you live in a city, even just in this last year, we've seen videos of tornadoes in like downtown urban areas, even over in like China. And, right outside Chicago had some pretty wicked tornadoes. Matter of fact, I think I even have a picture in my little slideshow here. But first and foremost is, just basic stuff like, okay, what do you need to live? Like, what does it take to stay alive? Well, obviously, you need food, water, shelter, air. Now, the air one obviously isn't so much of a problem. Hopefully never will be. But, food and water, two biggest ones. They call it the rule of threes, where you can survive, what is it, 3 minutes without air, what the heck is it? 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water. They say like 3 weeks without food, but technically it kind of depends on how much, fuel you have stored up on you. But, what was it? 3 hours in the cold. I honestly don't remember. It's been a little while, but you get the picture. You have certain things that you just cannot live without. And looking at the picture right here with these empty shelves, I mean, keep in mind, this is a Walmart right here in the US. And most of us all have been through the last couple years where we had, all the lockdown stuff and the supply chain issues going, which not only are still going on, but looking to be getting a lot worse here in the near future, which is another reason that I decided to start talking about this now. And I imagine it's probably a reason that other people have decided to start talking about it as well. And it's just, how many times did you see during what was going on where you went to a grocery store, went to Target or Walmart or something like that, and all the toilet paper was gone, all the paper towel was gone, they didn't have any milk, all the frozen French fries and potato products were, I mean, that stuff's still crazy. I have not seen the typical tater tots that I buy in a year. Like the same brand still putting stuff out. Luckily they still put out the waffle fries. It's that Alexia brand. Good stuff, by the way. If you ever see it, check it out. It's good. But yeah, they haven't put out the tater tots in a year. And I keep hearing from other places that, potato shortage and things like that. So potato products have been roughed. And then you also have a lot of these weird situations going on with some of these food processing plants having fires and getting hit by airplanes and all that stuff. Not saying that there's anything crazy coordinated or conspiracy going on there, but it happened and it's going to have effects. Add to that fuel prices, and so all the prices of everything are going to go up on top of the inflation because it's going to cost more to transport it. And then you got lockdowns in Shanghai, backing up ports pretty much all across the Eastern Asia seaboard. That's the word I'm looking for. And then all the stuff with Russia. So, I mean, we're getting hit from all angles at this point. So obviously you do not want to be in the position where you're just ignoring it. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change. Life as usual will continue to go on, which, by the way, is called normalcy bias. I've heard other people say normality bias, but normalcy bias, I believe, is the correct terminology there. But, when you're basically doing nothing different, you say, okay, well, all right, we're starting to get low on stuff. The fridge is kind of empty. You don't really feel like eating any of the stuff that's in the cabinets because maybe you just got the little stuff that you don't even really care to eat. Can't remember why you bought it. So you go to the store, getting ready to re-up, and you go there, and most of what you normally buy isn't even there. Okay, at that point, what do you do? Okay, well, maybe you buy some crappy stuff that you may or may not even like, or maybe stuff that you don't mind, but it's not really what you wanted. And you get stuck in that position where you're definitely thinking like, damn, like I wish I would have went last week when I thought about it, or when I was starting to get low, instead of waiting until I'm like completely out. And you also got to keep in mind with the grocery infrastructure in this country works on just-in-time inventory, which means, they don't keep stocks of things in the back. Like when stuff runs out on the shelf, it's not like there usually isn't more in the back unless maybe they just haven't unloaded from a truck or something. And so with the just-in-time inventory, basically they've set up this complex system where they generally have an idea of how much is going to sell, how fast, of what types of products. And so it's already set up ahead of time to, have the deliveries come to restock however much of the different items based on what the normal sales volume would be. So whenever you have an event where people kind of go out and panic buy, like prior to lockdowns, over the last couple of years, or prior to a winter storm, I mean, this happens every single year anywhere that gets, decent amount of snow. Or even in the South, when you start to get some of these freezes and the roads ice over, go to the store right before that. Oh yeah, everybody's there buying stuff up. And then, matter of fact, even last year when went a week without power because of all the nonsense going on with the power company. So you could probably imagine what state I'm in, because that pretty much made national news. Luckily for me, it was to the point where it ended up being like an hour without power, half hour with, hour without, half hour with. And so we kind of got lucky, like right where I'm at. But I know plenty of people around here who went 5, 6, 7 days without power. So it can happen regardless. Like if you think, you live in a warm climate, you're not going to get anything. First off, you also got to keep in mind that generally overall, the climate's kind of leaning toward getting a little bit colder in the winters. So just a heads up on that. I won't explain what's going on, but just because you think you live somewhere where things aren't going to happen there, believe me, it absolutely can, and it will. And then you deal with people who live in like hurricane areas and all that stuff. So basically what you would at least want to do, because they say the average household has about 3 days worth of food. So, think about how much you have in your fridge, your freezer, your cabinets. I know a lot of people, particularly if you're watching this channel and you're dealing with, trading or financial instruments and things like that, you probably have maybe a little bit more money to play around with. And I'd imagine you probably at least have a little bit more food than that. 'Cause, I mean, 3 days is pretty rough. But even in the area where I live, I mean, I know for almost a fact that there are a ton of people around me who I'd be surprised if they have 3 days worth. Because, being near like a university and having a whole bunch of college kids and younger people around, I know like when I was younger and you don't have money like that, you're not exactly spending extra money stocking up the kitchen or the pantry. And so, something like that happens. I mean, I remember seeing, like, even during, the previous situation, just seeing on the news where there were, like, mile-long lines of cars for people waiting to go to the food bank just to get food. So it absolutely happens. And I think after all that's happened in the last couple of years, everybody should pretty much be able to say now that, okay, yeah, like, shit happens. And better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And that could go for a lot of stuff, but particularly food, because I mean, whether it's just you or you have a family or something like that, like what happens if, gas skyrockets and you could barely even afford to go to work, and, just trying to get to the grocery store is going to cost you a whole bunch. And if everything at the grocery store goes up, better to stock up on stuff that lasts longer while it's cheaper. And the easiest thing you could do is it's kind of like dollar cost averaging, like the same way a lot of people would buy into crypto, where you're just constantly buying a little bit, and the price goes up, price goes down, and you end up kind of getting an average. Well, it's the same thing. Like every time you go to the grocery store, just grab a little extra, grab some extra cans of vegetables, grab some extra non-perishables, whether it's some pasta, some rice, stuff that's going to last a while. But at the same time, keep in mind that if you are going to start stocking up food, remember to stock what you actually eat, because, plenty of people go out and, you start filling 5-gallon buckets full of beans and rice, and you don't even eat beans. And so God forbid the time comes when you actually got to use it. Guess what? You're getting used to eating beans. But on top of that, there's a morale aspect to it too. So if the power goes out for a week and you're stuck here at the house, and maybe you got to cook outside on a little camping stove or something, because by the way, you don't really want to do that inside. And, you're cooking stuff out there. And if you're down to just your beans and rice, I mean, it's going to get real boring and you're going to start getting real depressed. So remember to mix it up a little bit and store the things you normally eat. Plus, on top of that, if you are storing stuff from the grocery store as opposed to actual storable food, you keep rotating it. Mark down the expiration dates with a Sharpie or something visible, so it's not you're not guessing or having to expend that extra energy with your lazy ass trying to figure out, how old is it. And so that way you just keep rotating stuff to the back. Like when you get stuff, pull it out or scooch it aside. I know it's a pain in the ass, or if you want to build something that's a little bit more economical, but keep it rotating so that way as you're eating it and you're buying more from the grocery store, at that point, like, you're barely even buying extra, because as you build up that extra amount every time you go, you're just replenishing what you'd use, basically. But yeah, I mean, that's the biggest reason, is the food thing. And a big rationale oh shit, hitting the microphone. A big rationale for that one is, I imagine at this point you guys have probably been to a grocery store while this was going on and seen a ton of people there. Started to see empty shelves. Depending on where you're at, some places were worse than others, but even in the picture here, you can see every damn cart's got a buttload of toilet paper, pun intended. And I do not recommend building the Giza pyramid of toilet paper up in your back bedroom. There are much better things you could be spending your money on. But to touch on the second one is, water. I mean, just look at the picture here. Pretty much every cart has at least one packet of bottled water. I mean, I'm looking over here, like, old girl in front. She's got one up top, one in the bottom, one on the cart. This dude's got one on the bottom. That person's got maybe two on the bottom. Even the cart over there has got a package of water. So keep in mind that, just because it's coming out of the faucet, and it, for the most part, has always been coming out of the faucet, doesn't mean it's forever guaranteed to come out of the faucet. Not that you don't want to drink water right out of the faucet anyways, just heads up. But, at least keeping a pretty decent store of bottled water, if nothing else, will get you through what you need for drinking. There are other little things you could do as far as, like, non-potable water if you need it for cleaning or anything like that. But, definitely keep a decent supply of drinking water, because, say you get a freeze and the pipes freeze, no water is coming out of the faucet, and you are definitely not going to be making it. Most people won't make it a couple days really without any water. And so, yeah, that can be very uncomfortable. And if it's freezing and you didn't get snow, you don't even have any snow to melt. Which, just FYI, if you are going to melt snow to drink it, wait until it warms up a tiny bit, because it will bring your body temperature down. And if you're in a situation like that, you might have to worry about hypothermia. You don't just want to sit there and keep eating snow. But, so the food, the water, and just start it up. You don't have to go and buy a year's worth all at once. There are, a number of good companies out there who make storable food. There's MREs, but they're expensive. I mean, unless you got money like that, knock yourself out. But there's some good storable food companies out there. Obviously, everybody knows My Patriot Supply, who makes the Ready Hour stuff. And I haven't tried it all yet, but I've eaten a bunch of their stuff, and it's not bad. You gotta cook it right. If you try to do it too fast, you get a little bit of that, I don't know, it doesn't soak through all the way to the middle, so you just gotta watch that. But, there are more than enough examples of people who wait till the last minute to go to the store, and you end up in a line like this, where it's, going out the door and around the block. And you don't want to be in that situation, because, first off, I mean, unless you're at the head of that line, and even if you are at the head of that line, there's a good chance a lot of stuff's going to be gone by the time you get around to it. But if you're at the end of that line, like, you already know, everybody in front of you, they're not just going in there for 5 items. Like, they see what's going on too, and they're going to fill that cart up just like everybody else. All right, like this picture right here, we got, I mean, this was just, last year. I mean, you got, a couple hundred people waiting outside of Costco for it to open. I mean, the stuff goes fast. It really does. Like, it goes super fast. Another one here over at Wally World. Just people everywhere, like filling all the aisles up. I mean, that is actually more common of a situation than most people think, because, for anybody who's been through that, there's a big storm coming up and everybody goes to the store. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. And if not, I guarantee most of you probably saw it during the COV stuff over the last couple of years. But then, okay, if we start getting into the realm of, disaster situations a little bit. So, okay, we went from talking about just your stuff that happens, your storms, your I don't even want to say the words because I'm going to put that stupid little C thing under the video, but you know what I'm talking about, the virus situations and all that kind of stuff, or, your natural disasters, which can definitely get a little bit worse in the area of like damage or having your house damaged or people getting hurt and things like that. But, we've also seen a lot of civil unrest over the last few years, particularly going back to like 2015, 2016. And we've seen plenty of cities and neighborhoods. Well, we'll get to that one here in a second. But, just in a case like this, I mean, think about Black Fridays. Like, it hasn't been much, lately the last couple of years with everything going on. But, think about prior to that where, I mean, just like this, I mean, people are climbing over each other just to get a TV for maybe a little bit cheaper, because keep in mind, they raise the prices up leading up to Black Friday and then lower it back down to where, oftentimes it's just the normal price. And don't get me wrong, yeah, there are deals and things like that. I mean, I got a decent TV on a pretty good deal once, but generally speaking, I don't know. I just don't care. I've got what I need. I'd rather get things that are useful than swap my TV out every 2-3 years. But I mean, just, you remember the scenes, every time where you get stuff like this, where, I mean, people are just going in, breaking out in fights, climbing over each other for a fucking TV. I mean, and not just that, people lining up for friggin' days, not exaggeration, but you know what I mean, lining up all the way around the block just for a new iPhone when they already have an iPhone and things like that. So just imagine, that's what people are willing to do for the little luxuries that they want. Imagine a situation like right now with supply chain issues and food production issues. If it gets to the point where there's not as much even getting to the grocery store, if people start getting hungry, that's a whole nother ball game. Like, we're not just talking about, hey, I want the new Samsung TV. I mean, we're talking about like, hey, my kids have been complaining to me every night this week about how they're hungry, but I don't have enough to, feed them that much. So we've been having to stretch our pantry to last the whole week. When you start getting into that kind of situation, I mean, people are going to get nasty. It's going to be like Danny Trejo without his Snickers bar. I mean, they're going to start getting attitudes, and people aren't going to give a, what, like in the store, like if you both reach for something at the same time, they're going to snatch it out of your hand. Like, people start getting, how it is when you get hungry, you start getting ornery, you start getting a little bit moody and stuff like that. I mean, imagine a whole lot of people like that. And you can see where that's going. But even look at this lady right here, just hanging onto the TV box. Look at this. These two chicks fighting over a bag. This might even be a staged photo, but just imagine that. But it's gonna be some mac and cheese or something. But then that leads us into what happens in those situations where things do start getting out of hand, whether it be, I mean, shoot, we're seeing, not this bad, but we're seeing a little bit right now with the Supreme Court decision going on. And, once the paid people get out there and they start agitating, they start spreading the word out through the network online and start getting everybody to come out and start bringing them in buses. And then you got people who legitimately come out because, they care, or that's, what they're into, or that's what they feel strongly about. And that mob mentality, once everybody starts getting riled up, it kind of goes down from there. And there's actually a situation, I don't even know what city this one was, but, and it might even be this one, where, you know, you see interviews with the people after the fact where they're like, hey, you know, you guys are out here like smashing windows, looting the stores and burning our buildings down, but they're like, these are our stores, like we live here too, and most of you guys aren't even from here. And the one lady's talking about how, like, now I gotta take the bus like all the way, you know, down the way just to go to the grocery store when I used to be able to walk right around the corner. And if we do run into a situation where food starts getting a little bit more scarce, yeah, people are going to lose their shit. And as you know, we see how much of the grab and go has been going on lately. And if you haven't, I don't know how you're missing it. Granted, it's largely more like the most of it in California, a lot of New York, but we're starting to see this new thing where there's like these flash mobs that assemble, and you'll have a group of people who like hook up online and they decide, all right, we're going to go run into this place and just grab what we can. And they figured out that, you know, if enough of us do it, they can't really stop us. Like, what do they got? One security guard and maybe a couple people working there who aren't about to put their life on the line. And then as they're doing it, people nearby on the street see it. And just like this situation in New York, I mean, yeah, it might be jewelry stores and, you know, Dolce and Gabbana stores or something like that. But if people are hungry, you know, the first place they're going is anywhere that's got food. And when 50 MFers go running in the door, smashing through windows, they're not going to leave anything behind. So hopefully it doesn't happen. But, you know, we've seen it for less already. So that's kind of the thing that you have to think about, is if things do get worse with supply chain situation, with food production and things like that, you know, hopefully it doesn't happen in your neighborhood, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen in some places. Like, I'm pretty much guaranteeing it at this point, you know, unless they can do something to curb what's coming down the pipe here. But, you know, just like here, you know, once people get an excuse, like, it doesn't even necessarily even have to be a great reason. You know, once it kicks off, you know, it's that herd mentality, it's that mob mentality. People just start going. And it's not just here in the US either. Like right here, this is South Africa. If you didn't hear about the riots and the looting they had in South Africa, I think it was last year, either last year or the year before. I mean, that was off the chain. They completely cleaned everywhere out. I mean, you can see just in this picture, what do we got? A couple bottles of oil on the floor, and that's about it. And then, yeah, like here, you had the situation with the Target where, I mean, not only were all the shelves cleaned up, hell, in some cases, they dragged the entire shelves right out the door and just dumped the whole shelf out on the sidewalk. Then you got this idiot over here trying to get at the self-checkout register. He wasn't the only one either. But, you know, once the situation reaches that critical point, that boiling point, people are too used to it now. We've had too many summers of, you know, riots getting out of hand and everything like that. And if you remember from last summer, I mean, what was the big thing that they were even talking about? They were trying to push everybody. They're like, hey, no, take it to the suburbs. Like, you know, people were complaining about them doing this in the cities. Now, granted, one of the big reasons that they do it in those cities is that they've got top cover. You know, if you know what that's about, they're basically getting a pass from the people in charge of those areas. Now, granted, if they come into other areas, they might see some pushback, but generally speaking, you know, if the state itself isn't willing to go in on it, then there's not a hell of a lot they can do, short of calling in, you know, all the city cops from every city around. But, you know, it doesn't take much for it to start looking like that right there. You know, it doesn't cost much either, just some Molotovs and, you know, the black clad clan with their whatchamacallit, umbrellas and the masks. Yep. But yeah, I mean, it can get out of hand quickly. So again, you know, particularly in this one, I'm just kind of talking about food and water. And if you found this interesting, you know, we can take it a little bit further here in a future video, start getting into some specifics. But for now, I'm just kind of talking about just stuff that would help you normally. I mean, even if it's just something little, say your car breaks down, you got to pay $1,500 to get it fixed or something like that, and you're short on money. Well, if you need to go to the grocery store at the same time that happens, at least you have some kind of food backup to where, you're not going to be eating ramen noodles every night for the next 2 weeks. Or God forbid, because obviously you're going to have to pay the rent, pay the car note, insurance, phone, internet, electric, water. So, having some reserves, it really should be a must. And if things keep going the way that they are going, I think a lot more people are going to learn that, many of them the hard way. I think a lot of people learned it the hard way during the lockdowns. Now, granted, they got lucky and they had, Big Brother government coming in and saying that, oh, you can't evict people and we're going to give you money, even though it was basically nothing. But yeah, it's, if it wasn't for that, it would have been real bad for a lot of people. I mean, those little stimulus checks obviously didn't do much, but, student loan deferments and, not being able to evict people. I will say, like, the payment protection plan stuff absolutely helped keep a lot of companies from closing down, if even just for a little bit. But, it's starting to become a yearly tradition with this stuff. And if you live near doesn't even have to be a big city, but big cities have been seeing it a lot. But, if you live in a place where you've seen protests before, you got to be aware of the fact that, the shit tends to get out of hand more times than not lately. But like this one here was in Serbia. So, I mean, it's not just the U.S. I mean, there have been some really big protests, around Europe and places like that. Even just the last couple of years, even France, UK. But when you have something with this many people, most people are legitimately just there because they care and they're trying to show solidarity. But, you're always going to have troublemakers. And, if they hit up Target, Walmart, grocery store, Walgreens, whatever it might be, I mean, who knows, when they're getting the next shipment, and they probably got to do repairs on the store. So, stuff can get scarce a lot easier than most people think. And then obviously you get situations like this where whether you're, a hurricane or tornado, stuff like that, that's a situation where the non-perishable food is invaluable, really. Because, something like that happens, believe me, it is an absolute hot mess, and it is very challenging to deal with because not only is your house either destroyed or all jacked up, but you're trying to save what stuff you can, and in some cases they won't let you back in, or maybe the stuff's getting wet and moldy, maybe it's got smoke damage. Now you got to figure out what you're going to do. Hopefully you're lucky enough to have like insurance that'll put you up in a hotel, or maybe you got to go to a family member's house, but now you're putting a burden on them. So any food that you could take with you is just worth its weight in gold. Floods, that's another one. And also something to keep in mind if you are in an area like that and you're storing food, maybe the big Rubbermaid tubs or something like that. Keep in mind, you want to keep it in an area that's relatively cool and dry. Should be somewhat obvious, but, you don't want to keep it in direct sunlight or, any moist, swampy area underneath your sink or something. Because it'll definitely last longer. If you store things improperly, you may be disappointed when you go to eat it. But yeah, I'm telling you, shit happens more often than people think. I know I was surprised the first time. I wasn't surprised the next few. But right here, this Chicago suburb right there, not the place you typically hear about tornadoes happening. And if you're anywhere up north, you know, freak snowstorms and blizzards absolutely happen. I remember one time, the only time I ever got stuck in the snow was driving through 4 feet of snow, and I just happened to be going in reverse around a corner in my girlfriend's apartment complex because somebody else got stuck in front of me, so I had to back it up and go around. So I'm kind of proud of that one. I made it through some crazy stuff. Going on the freeway, just single file line on the freeway, everybody doing like 35, 40. And this one time I see this pickup truck, and he goes and splits off from the line, and he's trying to get off the exit, and nobody's gone down that exit yet. It's just fresh snow. And you can't really tell how deep it is because it was pretty deep. So he starts going down the exit, and I just happened to turn my head and watch. And he's driving. The snow's starting to like push up because it's like, you know, in a big pickup truck, it was almost up to the hood, like as the snow was like accumulating in the front as he was pushing it, it was like kind of rolling up a little bit, like up to the top of the hood. And then all of a sudden, just boom, just dead stop. And it was like he hit a wall with a little bit of cushion. Oh, dude, yeah, that was crazy. His whole like front of the hood was under the snow, and it was coming right up to his windshield. Good times. But yeah, no, people get snowed in the house. I mean, oh my gosh. Like, imagine living in a place like that where you're getting like 30 feet of snow. That's insane. That's just crazy. But hey, you know, the climate stuff continues to happen like it looks like it might. And some people say it might. Who knows? We probably won't be seeing snow like that where I'm at, but up north might become a little bit more common, particularly if solar cycles ramping up. If we finally get the volcanoes to pick up, it's been a little bit light on the volcanoes lately, but you know, all the ash in the air makes everything cool down a little bit. Speaking of, this is Kiev in Ukraine. Everybody snowed in over there. Not right now, obviously, but yeah, so what'd you guys think? I don't know. I'm gonna not drag this out too much longer. If it's something that you guys have thought about or you're interested in or you've heard other people talk about, you know, let me know. I'm kind of curious what people think. I would like to, you know, maybe do a video once in a while, just maybe talking about some specific skills or things like that. I know, you know, one thing to keep in mind is even if you don't have money to start stocking up preps or things like that, you know, learning skills is free. You can learn damn near anything on the internet, on your phone that is in your hand most of the day anyways. You know, even when you're sitting in the bathroom, you can look up interesting stuff or how to do things. So just even taking time to, you know, learn some skills to maybe make you more self-reliant, you know, more independent is never a bad thing. Even if it's just how to cook certain stuff, like how to rehydrate food, I don't even know how to fix parts of your car. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that you can do to make yourself more independent, more self-reliant, less reliant on government or other people or, God forbid, you know, mommy and daddy. Like, just keep working on it. Keep building up some skills. You know, if you're like me and you enjoy being in the outdoors, you know, every time I go out hiking on the weekends, I generally try to maybe take some gear with me. I take a backpack every single time, even though half the time I don't even like use it or need it. Part of that is just to get acclimated to wearing the backpack, you know, throwing a bunch of extra water in there, throwing a bunch of weight in there. Because that's one thing, if you do start, you know, building yourself a pack and, you know, getting gear and things like that, the very first thing most people do is to overpack the shit out of it. And you end up with an excessively heavy pack. And you're probably a person who not only is not used to wearing a pack for long periods of time, but wearing a really heavy pack for long periods of time, believe me, it's going to kick your butt. I mean, unless at that point, I mean, if you're in shape and trained enough that you think it won't kick your butt, I imagine you've probably already been doing stuff like that. Because even if you're in pretty good shape, keep in mind that's not just your body weight that you're carrying. You know, you start putting 40, 50 pounds on your back. You're going to feel it, and it's not going to take all that long. Especially if you're going over rough terrain or, God forbid, going uphill. Oh, you're going to love it. So, you know, take it out. Practice with whatever you buy. Practice with it. Use it. Learn how to use it. You know, you never want to wait until it's a necessity to find out that you suck at using something or doing something. So, practice stuff. Learn the skills. Test your gear. You know, start to figure out, you know, you don't need to put everything in the backpack. You can learn to live without some stuff. And, you know, if you're interested, we'll talk more about this. You know, start getting into, you know, the whole get home bag thing, maybe your car kit. You know, they always say, like, the backpack you keep on you should have enough to make it back to your car, have enough in the car to make it back to the house, enough in the house to make it however long. So let me know if that interests you. And you know, have you been thinking about it? Have you been doing anything? Do you see what's going on with the economy in the world right now? And have you started to take precautions at all? So, all right, love you. Remember, keep being a badass. Stay happy. Life's too short to be sad and moping around. So get off your butt and do the damn thing. All right.